Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, can you please tell me from where and what time you're watching? Thanks.
The air was thick with unease as the old AIRBNB came into view, its shadowy silhouette looming against the dusky Iowa sky. The creak of the gravel under our tires was the only sound that broke the eerie silence of the isolated countryside. My girlfriend, Ava, leaned forward in her seat, squinting at the weathered facade. "It looks quaint," she said with forced cheer. I nodded, but something about the house made my stomach twist. We were here to celebrate my little brother's graduation with a surprise party. He had no idea we'd rented a place, let alone planned an entire gathering. While Ava and I began setting up, my other brother and I ventured into the basement to grab an extra table. The moment our feet hit the cold cement floor, an unspoken tension hung in the air. "You feel that?" I asked, half joking. He nodded. "Yeah, this place is giving me the creeps." The basement was dimly lit with cobwebs strung like forgotten memories in the corners. The faint smell of mildew lingered, and every step echoed ominously. As we searched for the table, the oppressive silence seemed to amplify. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Finally, we found it, leaning against the far wall. We didn't linger, practically racing back upstairs with nervous laughter. The party kicked off, and for a while the house felt alive, filled with laughter and music. It almost made me forget the unsettling basement. Almost. Ava decided to run a load of laundry mid-party. She'd barely taken 2 steps towards the basement stairs before she turned back. "Can you come with me?" she asked. "It's weird down there." I didn't argue. The thought of her being alone in that space made my skin crawl. We hurried through the task, the shadows in the corners seeming to stretch and shift as we moved. By the time we returned upstairs, my heart was racing. The party wound down as the night deepened. Guests trickled out until it was just me and Ava, tidying up and basking in the afterglow of the celebration. We were settling in for the night when the laundry buzzer echoed through the house. "I thought you already grabbed it," I asked. "I did," she replied, her voice tight. A chill ran down my spine. Together, we descended the basement stairs. The air felt heavier this time, pressing against my chest. Halfway down, the buzzer went off again, a sharp, jarring noise that made both of us jump. I grabbed the laundry quickly, and we bolted back upstairs without looking back. Ava's nervousness was contagious. We decided to check all the windows and doors, a habit we'd developed during our Airbnb stays. Each lock clicked into place, but the sense of unease didn't fade. The last door to secure was the one leading to the back garden, right at the top of the basement stairs. As I turned the lock, I felt it again, that oppressive dread, like unseen eyes were boring into my back. My pulse quickened, but I forced myself to ignore it. We climbed the steep stairs to the attic bedroom, the light switch at the bottom casting dim illumination ahead of us. Just as I reached the top, a loud rhythmic banging erupted from below. It was metallic, frantic, and all-consuming. Ava froze, her face pale. "Stay here," I whispered. I crept toward the kitchen, where the sound seemed to originate, but as I approached, it abruptly stopped. A glance back up the stairs revealed the source, the attic ceiling fan spinning violently, its mounting pole clanging against the ceiling. My heart pounded as I sprinted up to turn it off. Ava was right behind me, her breath shallow. We tried to brush it off, convincing ourselves it was just an electrical issue. Exhausted, we finally crawled into bed. The night was suffocatingly hot, the air thick and still. I drifted into a restless sleep, plagued by dreams of a shadowy figure standing on the lawn, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Morning came like a reprieve. I shuffled to the kitchen, bleary-eyed and desperate for coffee. As the kettle boiled, my gaze drifted to the basement door. It felt wrong, like something was waiting. Compelled by a morbid curiosity, I descended the stairs one last time. The basement was silent, but the silence felt alive. I searched for anything out of place but found nothing. Still, the sense of being watched was overwhelming. I hurried back upstairs, determined to pack and leave as quickly as possible. As we did a final sweep, the laundry buzzer went off again. Ava and I exchanged a look of pure terror. "Nope," she muttered. We grabbed our bags and rushed for the door. As I carried the last load to the car, I heard it. The ceiling fan upstairs spinning wildly once more. The sound of the mounting pole hitting the ceiling was unmistakable. I didn't stop to investigate. By the time I reached the car, my hands were trembling. "What happened?" Ava asked, her eyes wide. "The fan. It started again," I managed to say. I slid into the driver's seat and we sped off, the house growing smaller in the rearview mirror. At a nearby diner, I texted the Airbnb host, mentioning the faulty washer and ceiling fan. I didn't mention the dread that had taken root in that house, or the feeling that something unseen had been watching us. Even now the memory lingers, the oppressive silence of the basement, the rhythmic banging of the fan, and the sense that we weren't alone in that house. I don't know what was down there, but I'm certain it was something I never want to meet again. The air was thick with the stillness of the night, broken only by the faint rustling of leaves in the breeze. Somewhere in the hills of Super Can, where luxury villas dotted the landscape, our dream vacation was about to take a sinister turn. It had been 2 days since we arrived at the stunning Airbnb, a villa perched high above the French Riviera, with sprawling balconies and a pool that seemed to melt into the horizon. My wife, our 2 kids and I were enchanted by its beauty, spending our days exploring the charming streets of Cannes and savoring every moment. But as the sun dipped into the sea, leaving behind a trail of crimson light, an unsettling energy began to seep into the house. At first it was just the little things. Shadows darting across the windows when no one was outside. Faint tapping noises in the middle of the night, as if someone were testing the sturdiness of the glass. The uneasy feeling of eyes lingering on us when no one was around. My wife and I dismissed it as nothing more than unfamiliarity with the place, an overactive imagination fed by jet lag and new surroundings. But by the 3rd evening, the feeling of being watched became impossible to ignore. While my wife was tucking our kids into bed, I decided to step outside for some air. The villa's pathways were dimly lit, the soft glow of the garden lights casting long, wavering shadows. As I strolled along the stone path that led toward the edge of the property, the silence pressed in on me, heavy and suffocating. Then I saw it. A figure emerged from the darkness just beyond the pool, tall, imposing, with piercing eyes that gleamed like an animal's in the moonlight. My breath caught in my throat as the shadow stepped closer, revealing a face that was cold, sharp, and dangerous. And then it hit me. I had seen this face before, plastered on the news back home. This was no stranger. It was a wanted criminal. My instincts kicked in as the man lunged toward me, his intentions chillingly clear. Heart pounding, I turned and ran, sprinting back toward the villa with everything I had. Slamming the door behind me, I locked it, hands trembling as I fumbled to secure the windows. My wife and kids rushed into the living room, alarmed by my panic. "What's going on?" my wife asked, fear etched across her face. "There's someone out there," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Lock every door, every window, now." That night was a living nightmare. The man prowled around the villa, his footsteps crunching on the gravel outside. Whispers floated through the air, low and menacing, as if meant to torment us. He rattled the doorknobs, testing each lock, while we huddled together in the dimly lit living room. My wife clutched our children close as I gripped a fire poker, my eyes fixed on the shadows shifting beyond the curtains. The hours crawled by, each second heavier than the last. Just when it seemed the darkness would swallow us whole, the first light of dawn pierced the horizon. The noises outside ceased, and for the first time in hours, we dared to breathe. But our relief was short-lived. Peering through the window, I saw him again, crouched in the dense shrubs that bordered the villa. He hadn't left. He had been watching us all night. I dialed the emergency number, my voice shaking as I pleaded for help. "There's a man outside, a criminal. Please send someone now." Minutes later, the distant wail of sirens filled the air. Red and blue lights flickered across the villa walls as police cars sped up the winding road. Armed officers poured onto the property, flashlights slicing through the early morning haze. And then, they found him. The man was crouched in a thicket near the pool, his face twisted in fear as he realized the game was over. The officers subdued him quickly, leading him away in handcuffs. My family and I watched from the safety of the villa, tears of relief streaming down my wife's face. In the days that followed, we packed up and left, our dream vacation shattered by the nightmare we'd endured. As the plane took off, I looked out the window, catching one last glimpse of the villa perched on the hill. It was beautiful, serene, and utterly deceptive. To this day, I can't forget the piercing eyes of the man who stalked us, or the cold, creeping terror of that night. It's a reminder that danger doesn't always hide in dark alleys. Sometimes it lurks in paradise. The farmhouse loomed in the distance, a shadowy silhouette against the moonlit October sky. The road leading to it was narrow and cloaked in a thick fog, as if the world itself were warning us to turn back. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, my heart pounding as a chilling thought crossed my mind. We shouldn't be here. Look, the host left the lights on for us, it'll be fine. The warm glow from the farmhouse windows should have been inviting, but instead, it felt like the house was watching us. Even Max, our usually excitable dog, seemed wary. His ears perked up, his tail wagging cautiously as he stared into the darkness surrounding us. We parked and stepped out into the biting autumn air. The crunch of leaves beneath our feet echoed unnervingly loud in the quiet night. I felt a shiver run down my spine, though whether it was from the cold or something else entirely, I couldn't tell. As we approached the door, the house seemed to groan in welcome, the sound of the wind rattling its ancient wooden frame. Inside, the farmhouse was quaint with creaky wooden floors and rustic furniture. It smelled faintly of wood smoke and something else, something old and forgotten. Sarah lit a few candles while I explored the kitchen. Everything seemed normal, the cupboards stocked, the fridge humming softly. Yet the air felt heavy. By the time we settled into bed, the countryside stillness enveloped us. There were no city noises, no distant hum of traffic, just silence. And then the silence was broken. Thud. I shot upright, my heart racing. Did you hear that? It's just the house settling. Go back to sleep. But I couldn't. The sound had been deliberate, like footsteps just outside our bedroom door. Gathering my courage, I crept out to investigate, Max following close behind. The hallway was empty, the shadows long and shifting under the flickering candlelight. I shook my head, convincing myself it was nothing, and returned to bed. Still, sleep eluded me. The next morning, the crisp autumn air did little to shake my unease. The countryside will do us good, she said. Sarah, ever the optimist, suggested a walk, just the whisper of leaves rustling in the breeze. My eyes darted to the tree line, but there was no one there. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. We strolled through rolling hills and vibrant foliage, Max bounding ahead. You're so jumpy, Sarah teased. I swear it's like something's following us, I muttered. She laughed, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Every creak and sigh of the house amplified in the silence. Then a cold breeze swept through the room. I sat up, clutching the blanket. And then I heard it. Whispering. Faint and unintelligible, coming from the corner of the room. My heart pounded as I turned to look. There, standing in the shadows, was a figure. Its form was indistinct, shifting like smoke, but its presence was undeniable. "Sarah," I choked out, shaking her awake. "Do you see that?" She bolted upright, her eyes wide. But when she looked, the figure was gone. "It's your imagination," she said, though her voice wavered. "Go back to sleep." But I couldn't. The figure's presence lingered, and I knew it was watching us. That night, determined to find answers, I stayed awake. As Sarah slept beside me, I whispered into the darkness, "If someone is here, show yourself." The air grew icy, and a faint mist coalesced in the center of the room. Slowly, it formed the shape of a woman. Her features were blurred, her presence ethereal, but her eyes, they held a sorrow so deep it froze me in place. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice trembling. Her reply was barely audible, like the rustle of leaves. "I am trapped, forgotten. I seek release." We delved deeper into the farmhouse's history, piecing together the story of the young bride's tragic death. With guidance from old folklore, we prepared a ritual to release her spirit. That final night we stood in the living room, candles flickering around us. Reciting the incantation felt surreal, as if the house itself was holding its breath. The air grew heavier, the temperature dropping sharply. And then she appeared. The ghostly bride stood before us, her form more distinct now. Tears glistened in her spectral eyes as she whispered, "Thank you." With a soft sigh, her form dissolved into the air, leaving behind a profound stillness. The farmhouse felt lighter, as if its very foundation had been freed from a heavy weight. As we packed to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that the farmhouse wasn't done with us. The silence was different now, less oppressive, but still charged with an energy I couldn't explain. I glanced in the rearview mirror one last time and thought I saw her, standing on the porch, her translucent form watching us with gratitude. And then she was gone. The countryside swallowed the farmhouse, leaving only the memory of what had transpired. But even now, I can't forget the ghostly bride and the haunting beauty of her sorrowful eyes. The farmhouse had been her prison, but it had also been her home, and for those fleeting nights it had been ours too.